All the Money in the World is the newest film from Ridley Scott, and this movie tells the true story of John Paul Getty III, who is the grandson of who was, at the time, the richest man in the history of the world, Jean Paul Getty. And it follows Jean and the mother of this boy who was kidnapped, and it shows her trying to negotiate with her father-in-law, trying to convince him to pay the ransom for $17 million. If you know anything about this film, it's virtually impossible not to discuss this movie without bringing up some of the controversy that happened behind the scenes of the making of this movie. Jean Paul Getty was originally supposed to be portrayed by Kevin Spacey, but because of the sexual assault allegations that befell him, he was removed from this project, and Christopher Plummer was brought in, and they reshot all of the scenes with Jean Paul Getty in just 2 weeks. And I thought that was a really brilliant decision by the people involved with this film. Not only would I have not watched this movie if Kevin Spacey was still in the film, but I also would have just been very distracted by the fact that he is 30 or so years younger than Jean Paul Getty actually is, and I would have to look at that horrendous special effects makeup for 2 hours. But thankfully, they hired Christopher Plummer, an old man, to portray an old man. It's crazy, right? And I am so glad that they did, because he is excellent in this film. I like to imagine that Christopher Plummer just showed up on set and glanced at the script and then just absolutely knocked it out of the park, but I'm sure it didn't go down that way. But he just makes it look so easy in this film because he's just an absolute legend. He does such an excellent job at portraying this slimy and selfish man who is too blinded by his own greed to save even his grandson. Michelle Williams portrays the mother of the kidnapped son in this film, and she, as usual, is excellent. She's much more resilient in this film than she typically is. She usually portrays much more vulnerable characters, but for a woman to go through as much as she did in this film, I thought she did a great job at playing someone who is just so strong and willing to fight for her son. I think Ridley Scott did a very fine job at directing this film. This movie isn't nearly as big of a spectacle as something like Blade Runner or Prometheus. This is a really dialogue-heavy film that could have been very slow, but thankfully Scott is able to make it as exciting as it could be. And that is where my issues come in with this film. This being such a dialogue heavy movie, I think that the dialogue in question could be a bit better. Frequently, I found myself checking my watch in this movie because all too often this film just drags. This is a movie that is almost 2.5 hours long with trailers, and I would have appreciated having some more moments of tension in the dialogue, and I really just didn't get that sense of suspense and conciseness that I thought the screenplay would have had. I don't need explosions and gunshots to keep my attention. I just think that if you're going to have such a dialogue-heavy film, the dialogue should be just as taut as the situation that these characters are in. But even with that being said, I did enjoy All the Money in the World, but I think it could have been better. The first half is considerably slower than the second. I believe that is due to some of the rather lackluster dialogue, as I said. This is a film that takes its time with its characters, for better or for worse. I think that if you would have shaved off maybe 10 to 15 minutes off of the runtime, it would have made it much more snappy and much more urgent. But thankfully, because of the excellent performances from Christopher Plummer and Michelle Williams, it's hard not to admire this film at least. Because this film takes great care to be thorough with its storytelling, it results in another solid notch in the belt of one of the more prolific filmmakers working today. So did you guys see All the Money in the World? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video. And if you did, click the link down below and subscribe to my channel for more reviews and related things. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.